You're listening to the Training Ground Guru podcast. In every episode, we bring you insights into the teams behind the teams in professional football. Coming up on today's episode.
I'm not the sporting director who sits on the bench and needs to tell the coach what to do. That's his job. I guess it's about trying to find that sweet spot between I'm there to support you, but I'm not there to control you. In Germany, it's just the way of the job, but it's always a fascinating question from overseas, which comes particularly from England. Wow, crazy. The sport director is allowed to go on the bench or in the dressing room, and that's what I mean about the discrepancies between the job roles in the countries. Is just, if I'm not there on the bench, if I'm not there active on game day, it's seen as abnormal here as opposed to normal.
I'm Simon Austin from Training Ground Guru, and our guest on this month's episode is Paul Fernie. Paul is an English sporting director who's gaining a big reputation in Germany. After growing up in Hull, he started off as a coach and analyst before the opportunity came to join Wiesbaden as Head of Recruitment and then sporting director. Under his charge, the club gained promotion to Bundesliga 2, despite only having a modest budget. Now he's been appointed sporting director of SV Darmstadt. Paul told us how the sporting director role works in Germany, what it was like to work under Graham Potter and Paul Mitchell, and why more English staff should give it a go abroad. We hope you enjoy this episode, and if you do, please give us a follow via your preferred podcast provider. Thank you very much for joining us on the podcast, Paul.
Yeah, good morning. Thanks for having me. I'm really looking forward to the chat.
And whereabouts are you speaking to us from today?
I'm speaking to you guys from Darmstadt in Germany. So I'm currently at the stadium. As is normal in Germany, actually, our stadium and training building and training pitches are on the same complex. So we got a new training building built 4.5 years ago now. We've got a new part of the stadium built as well. So I'm currently in one of the lounges at the other side of the stadium because in my office I don't get a lot of quiet time because people always want to come in and ask questions or solve some problems. So I'm currently in one of the lounges in the stadium.
And you were appointed to the job in April. What has it entailed since then?
So I pretty much walked into a team in April, a Bundesliga team who they've not won since October. So that probably sets the scene for the atmosphere at the club. It was a disappointing season for the club who got promoted to the Bundesliga. And I guess I come in at the end with 5 games to go. Not with a realistic chance to keep them in the league or help keep them in the league, but more or less to win some time and make some evaluations and assumptions that would help me and us in turn in the summertime and beyond that. So been a bit of a whirlwind at the beginning, but the usual side of it of building relationships, getting to know people, understanding people's strengths and weaknesses, understanding what has happened and why it happened, both from an individual perspective, collectively as departments, and also with the guys in the team as well. So getting as much knowledge as I possibly can, as much understanding as I can to the situation, at the same time making my own assumptions for what we need to do then to move on to the next level and the next phase of our history in this club here in Darmstadt.
And have you got a good gauge on what went wrong so far?
Yeah, listen, I talk to a lot of people internally. I think it's important to give people a voice. You've got your perception from externally, of course you do, because you follow football as football fanatics, whether it's your club or other clubs. You've always got an eye on what's happening, but it's not until you truly get inside that you can put on, find reasons to why things are happening. And my first port of call was then to speak to individuals, find out what their perception was of what was happening this season. What do we do really well? Because we can't forget that we've done really well in the last years too. We've got to the Bundesliga, which is a fantastic achievement for a club of this size, and also with the departments as a collective, and then of course with the players, as I mentioned. I spoke to the leadership team. We did a bit of an analysis with all individuals at departments and the guys as well in the team to see what was their perspective and what was their thoughts, and pretty basic really. Did a SWOT analysis, said to the different departments, different people, staff and players, it's your job to present back to me what you guys are thinking. I'm going to facilitate you, but I need your words, I need your input, I need your enthusiasm, because it's going to help us move forward into the future. And then that helps me then formulate a plan to, okay, what's maybe missing, what do we need to do more of, a bit less of, and build a bit of a new structure to say that we're going to go in this direction, and we need everybody. But for that, again, understanding on a level of what happened before my time. without finger pointing. It's not about putting blame on things. It's about realistically looking where we are, you know.
Yeah. So you were in that assessment phase initially. Are you actually at the stage of instigating changes now?
Yeah, so we're now in the second week of pre-season. So we had 1 week in a training camp. Now we're into the second week now where we're starting to play games. I think everybody knows who does this job. There's no summer holidays really, so it gave me a good chance while everybody was away to start to formulate my plan and make some structural changes to the infrastructure of the staff, move certain people out of departments and give them new sort of responsibilities and roles, and just get a bit more clarity really in what was expected and what I expect from my side as well with the staff members. And the guys, to have a feeling that when the guys come back to training, it feels different. Also important for me to not only bring in new ideas for the good of the club, but also try and change the perception and the environment and the feeling of the club at the moment. And you can do that with the squad. Now we had 17 contracts that ran out, which is quite a lot. So you've got a chance to do something different there. You can make changes with the staff, which doesn't always mean changing the staff and letting go of people, which means changing the job roles, as I've just mentioned, and trying to work with people at the start. Then small things around the building. Can you put some new pictures up and paint the walls and change the structure of the day so the guys are maybe, meeting at different times and leaving at different times as opposed to what was before. I'm just trying to change the feeling of when the guys come back. It feels different.
Excellent. And have you got a decent budget for Bundesliga 2? Will it give you a good chance of going up?
No, listen, we're probably mid-table with regards to our budget, although we've come down from the Bundesliga. The second league is crazy. I think you look at the teams that are in it this season alone, that's coming up to us now. Cologne have come down from the Bundesliga. You've got Hamburg, Hertha Berlin, Schalke, teams like Hanover, Nuremberg. There's some really, Kaiserslautern, some really big traditional clubs where the competition's really high. And I think a couple of times last season, the attendances in the second Bundesliga was higher than in the Bundesliga, for example, and that'll be even more so this season. So with that comes a lot of competition, a lot of financial competition, and that's where we've got to be a team who's creative. We've got to be a team who's innovative and trying to find that competitive edge in other, areas of the club to try and gain that bit of advantage over our competitors.
And the sporting director role is becoming more and more common in England now. So I think every Premier League club has got one, or there's a couple who is vacant, but they're looking to appoint. But it's much more established in Germany, it's fair to say.
Yeah, it is, and that's one of the reasons I moved over here at the end of 2016, if I'm honest. I felt like in my career, it was two avenues to go through, right? You can become a coach and try and go down that route to become a manager one day, or there's something else on the other side of it. And that other side was a little bit unknown to me still, if I'm honest. But I knew there was a management role out there that is in the continent, as they say, looked like a sporting director. What it entailed and what it actually meant, I wasn't quite sure back then, if I'm honest. But I knew it was something that interested me and piqued my enthusiasm, at least. I made the move over here to see a different structure of a football club. And that showed me then, a different way of working, a different structure, and all the things what I'd seen in the 10 years in England with a manager, for example, with all the pressure on their shoulders, having to decide everything, take control of everything, which can sometimes distract them away from their main job, what they're judged upon, which is winning games and developing football players. And I think the turnaround or turnover of football managers in England at that time was, I think, in average 12 to 13 months you're in the hot seat. So there's got to be a reason for that. And every team talks about finding continuity. And I just felt, maybe with the German model, there could be something to learn that I could develop my own experiences with as well. And that was definitely the case.
We had a piece a few years ago from Dave Redding, who was at the FA, and he talked about there being the concept of the unicorn manager in England. And I suppose that's because we haven't had the sporting director as much. So do you think the sporting director is a much more prominent role in Germany?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's been here for many years, so I think it's nothing new here. So that the sporting director is responsible for everything which encompasses sport, for one. That you're pretty much one of the two main faces of sport, and you're held accountable for everything you do. There's a lot of media representation involved in the job over here, which goes with it as well. But ultimately, the success of sport falls on your shoulders, and it's your job to employ the right people and get the right strategy in place. I guess it fits this club at this moment in time to try and make sure you get sustained success in the future. And the sporting director here in this country plays a big role in that.
Do you think the role is slightly different in Germany to the one we see in England? I know it varies in England, but would you say generally it's different?
I think it varies. I think it's difficult for me to say exactly how, because I've never been a sporting director in England, but I've obviously got a lot of colleagues who are in those job roles. I think what I find here in Germany is it's pretty much set in stone with regards to, let's say, a job description and what's expected. and what your role is in this club. I feel like in England, my own opinion is at the moment, you've got quite a few different job titles, you've got quite a few different job profiles, and that maybe creates a bit of a grey area for who's responsible for what. Whereas, in Germany, because it's been here for so many years, it's almost set in stone that there's not, although there is a hierarchy element to it, it's about working together and working with everybody for the good of the club and the good of the cause, and there's no ego battle, there's no discrepancies between who's responsible for what, which gives people clarity, gives everyone in the job roles clarity, which I think helps everybody in turn to be successful.
So would that term sporting director always be used? Because like you say, in England we have director of football operations, chief football, all sorts of different titles, often without a clear reason why. But Germany, it would always be sporting director, would it?
Yeah. So 99% of the time, you've got a sporting director in place, and they say that job role, position, title, I guess, has been in this country for over 20 years and maybe even longer. For whatever reason, I've not quite got to the bottom of it, why it originated here and has stayed so long, longer than any other country. But we certainly look in this country at other models, and I think what I see is from my research is, Simon, that I think every country has got a different meaning to this job role. You've got in Holland the technical directors, in England many different job titles, in Germany in the continent sporting directors, in America MLS general managers. You've got quite a few different descriptions of what it involves, and I think, my opinion, the German model has got it really cut down to say, okay, this is what the role involves, entails, and the expectations of it.
And I know Manchester United, they've just brought in Dan Ashworth as sporting director, and they've got Jason Wilcox as technical director. And it's my understanding Jason will be more involved with game model, coaching methodology, things like that. Is that a model you would see in Germany?
Not typically. No, not typically at the moment. There's not many examples of a sporting director, for example, and a technical director. I see the value in it. I see the value in having some help and easing the load, because it's a big responsibility. But I guess you're back to the model which makes sense for your club. You're back to what is expected. Is the role clearly defined, and how do we implement that role to have maximum success? And I think if that looks like a sporting director and a technical director, or a sporting director and assistant sporting director, which is also not uncommon in England at the moment, I guess it's about finding the right people who fit those job roles and the expectancies. That's probably the most important thing.
And you do oversee so we're talking academy, recruitment, analysis, performance and medicine, all the football departments within the club.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, so from the different departments within the first team, we've actually, as of this season, got a top talent team, which is the under-21 team, which they're going to play in a men's league, which is fantastic for us. It's a new beginning for us in this sense as well. And also the academy, falls under my remit.
And one thing I've always been interested in, and people comment on in this country, is the fact you see the sporting director on the bench in Germany on a match day. So will you be doing that, and what is the thinking behind that?
Yeah, interesting one. When I first became a sporting director here in 2021, it was one of the first things I questioned, what is the reason for that? And it's pretty interesting, the response I got, actually, because my president at the time said to me, you are the face of sport. You need to be seen to be active and involved in that role. And, ultimately you're judging everything which goes on, and a match day is a huge part of it. So you need to be present, you need to be active, but it's about finding the right meaning for active, I guess. I'm not the sporting director who sits on the bench and needs to tell the coach what to do. That's his job. No, he gets paid for that, and the expectation is that he reaches decisions, and he will be judged upon his decision making at some point. So I guess it's about trying to find that sweet spot between, I'm there to support you, but I'm not there to control you, and that's the way I've always seen that role, really. But here in Germany, it's just not even a topic for people. It's just the way of the job. But it's always a fascinating question from overseas, which comes particularly from England. Wow, crazy. The sport director is allowed to go on the bench or in the dressing room, and that's what I mean about the discrepancies between the job roles in the countries. Is just, if I'm not there on the bench, if I'm not there active on game day, it's seen as abnormal here as opposed to normal. What
sort of inputs would you have from the bench then on a match day? I'm just trying to think what they could be.
Yeah, so I guess I'm always looking to see what's happening. Are we efficient enough? Is everybody performing to their maximum potential? And I guess everybody entails the squad on the pitch, the players on the pitch, on the bench. Everyone's got their job roles on a match day. I see it a little bit like Formula One, really. You know, when the car comes into the cockpit, everyone's got their job to do, everyone's got their role and responsibility. You know, we look at who sits where on the bench, what makes more sense, who talks to who mostly in the game, what's the line of communication going to be, and make sure that everything runs smoothly, really. That's where I see my job on the match day. And there, because, you know, I guess with the experience I've had in my career with different job roles, I can then support the head coach as and when needed, but I'm a little bit less proactive in that sense. I'm there when needed, when called upon, when asked for my opinion. But besides that, I'm looking at, you know, what's going on and are we fulfilling our potential on match day to try and get the 3 points.
Would you sit right next to the head coach?
In the other club, yes, I did. In this club, I decided to sit a little bit further down. I think it's important that the coach can speak to his team in the heat of the moment, and it's important that they've got the line of communication between themselves. So I sit just next to the coaching team at the moment.
And I read a previous interview you did, and you were comparing Germany and England, and you said Germany has been ahead in terms of coach education, you think, and England ahead in terms of player development. So, I thought that was very interesting. Could you just talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think what we've seen in the last years is a plethora of German coaches who've obviously been successful, obviously in England as well. You've got some pretty good examples there from German coaches who've come in as an element of success, right? And I think when I look at the licensing here in Germany, I think the pro license here, they've actually now made it more difficult to get a place on it. I think they've now realised, okay, we was heavily weighted on the coach development side of it. Now we're going to restrict it a little bit more and make it a little bit more difficult to attain a place. And they're having the same discussions in this country at the moment, which is maybe where we was in England 11 or so years ago with, you know, what does the future look like for us? You know, what does the future talent look like for us in this country? What we're going to do, where we're going to be. The golden generation is sort of gone in this country, and although they've performed pretty well at the moment in the Euros, in the last 12 months or so, there's been a lot of question marks around what comes next in the player development. And I think you look at our country at the moment in England, where we've, you know, invested in EPPP in the last years, where I think there's a few curious question marks as well at the beginning of that process, but I think it's paid dividends in the end as to where we are now as a nation and the young talent we've developed and nurtured, and obviously give a platform to as well. You know, on the other side of that, the young English coaches, you know, the old argument, are they getting the exposure? Are they getting the chances which they maybe have earned, you know? Or do we typically go for an international coach because they've got more experience? Well, why have they got more experience? Well, because they've had the platform to be able to take the opportunity. So it's a double-edged sword, really. And I think it's an interesting debate to have. And I think we've still got room to grow in England with regards to young English coaches getting that chance, really. I guess it's down to chance and opportunity. Same with young players. You know, people will surprise you, and how often do you see a young player make a debut and people go, wow, really surprised? Well, don't be surprised. They just need a chance, you know, a chance and a platform and an opportunity, someone who believes in them and gives them the chance to grow and develop. If you don't give people the chance, my opinion, you're never going to find out.
And I don't think the German national team's ever had a foreign head coach, or maybe there was, I remember reading 60 years ago or something, but not in living memory. So is the culture very much to give German coaches a chance at all levels? Because I know in England there is a culture of bringing quite a lot of foreign coaches in, especially at the top levels.
Yeah, there is. I mean, I think I was reading something around a year ago, and I can't say exactly what it was, but in my head it was something around, when an average international coach comes into England, they have 100 more games, or around 100 more games under their belt as a head coach than a young English coach, which I found really quite fascinating. You know, that's probably a reason as to why they're getting the jobs, because they're more experienced. Whereas in German football, I guess you've got the second team format, so under 23 teams play in the professional league. So in the third league in Germany last year, I had Freiburg second team, Dortmund second team, Hanover have now gone up into the third league. So they're playing real football, you know, against men in a tough league that's televised, that's got exposure. They get exposed to so many different things, and you know, obviously the young coaches coach in that league as well. So it's not as if they're not getting exposure at a high level. Is that a reason why they excel a little bit quicker or accelerate a little bit quicker? Possibly, because the exposure's there, the chances there, and they're playing in a real men's league.
Yeah, it's tricky in England with the pyramid, isn't it? Because we did a story yesterday that there's going to be another cup competition where 21s can play against senior sides. So I think they're constantly trying to think of ways, aren't they, to achieve that senior competition for young players. But it's difficult without the B teams and with the pyramid.
What's really interesting is that, you know, if you've got a pretty established up and coming coach in a Premier League under-19s team, for example, At what point do you then think about loaning that staff member out to a different country to gain experience, or to a different league to gain experience? We've seen player loans happen for years. Can you start to loan out staff members? I think it's an interesting thing. We've got to solve a problem somehow. In my opinion, we've got to solve that problem of how do we expose the coaches to more minutes, to more environments where they're going to be at the senior level and ready to perform, as opposed to it's the unknown. We prefer to go somewhere else. What can you do? I'm a big keen believer on problem solving, and I think that's probably one we've got to try and solve as a nation.
And something I've not touched on yet, but probably a lot of people listening are wondering, is how an Englishman has ended up in Germany as a sporting director. So I probably should have touched on that at the start, but could you just tell us about that, please?
Yeah, interesting one. So I worked for 10 years in England, different job roles, coaching roles, performance analyst roles, scouting roles. And then my second to last head coach in Blackburn Rovers was Paul Lambert. And Paul came in at the time with his experience, obviously, as a player, not only in Celtic, but before that in Dortmund, winning the Champions League here. And he came into Blackburn with a fresh mindset, other ideas. Again, he did his coaching badges in Germany, which I found quite interesting still. And he just came in with different structures to his daily working and different ideas, and it was quite refreshing to be a part of that. Learned quite a lot from him in that short period of time when he was at Blackburn. When he left in the summertime of 2016, he called me and said, listen, do you have the aspiration, or do you have the ambition one day to work abroad? Because he's got some contacts in Germany and would be interested in making a step over. So listen, sliding door moments you can't control. I didn't have any say in Paul getting the job at Blackburn at that time in the job role I was in, but that shaped and formed the last 7 or 8 years of my life to where we are now. And I've had some fantastic experience off the back of that decision. I think at the time a lot of people did not understand why I'm doing that, why I'm leaving Blackburn, such an established club with great facilities, to go to a third league club in Germany, which I couldn't pronounce the name of. I didn't know the league, didn't know the language, didn't know the culture. But as I mentioned, there was rhyme and reason towards why I did what I did. Be exposed to a different structure, hopefully learn a new language and test myself socially and culturally as well. So in my mind, I couldn't lose. If it doesn't go well on the pitch, at least I've learned a new skill set on the other side of it. So that was pretty much my mentality and mindset. And lucky for me, it paid off. We had a successful time there. I think we got promoted to the second Bundesliga in my third season using young German players, and that's when the call from Red Bull came and the interest on that side of it. So yeah, again, sliding door moments, meeting people at the right moments at the right time. Does it happen organically, or is it something there in the higher powers? I'm not sure, but it's definitely something that's reoccurred in my career a lot. Been influenced by people and meeting people at the right times, and I guess it's due down to what influences you allow into your life as well, good and bad. That we can't forget, there's also negative influences, which I've also had shape us and form us as well into our future ways. So thankful for that meeting with Paul and that opportunity to work with him, because that ultimately set me up now for where I am today.
Yeah, and I suppose you've taken a leap of faith taking that head of recruitment job at Wiesbaden, but they've taken a leap of faith as well, I guess, in taking a young Englishman who's a performance analyst at Blackburn.
100%. I didn't take that for granted at all. And I think Wien Wiesbaden at the time was a special club. And I think, again, circumstantial. The president of the club is Brita, the water filter, which is obviously a worldwide company. Very, very, I always say is a global player, is very well connected. So his company is international. His mindset was international. He works all day with different countries. So the level of risk, I guess, for him to bring an English guy in wasn't as high as maybe another German club. But again, I don't take it for granted. And right up until the end, I was very thankful for the opportunity, because it's not normal that you give somebody a chance who can't speak the language, who doesn't know the league, maybe got good ideas, but it's about transferring those ideas in the end. From the start to the end, very, very thankful and grateful for that opportunity.
Was it hard to settle in as a young man who can't speak the language, new country, new football culture? It sounds like it must have been very hard.
Yeah, listen, you go from one extreme to the other, really. So I think it was November 2016. I moved over. It was minus 14 degrees, training ground on top of a mountain. The training ground in comparison to Blackburn was night and day. So that's when I more or less went back to my beginning at Doncaster, really. You sort of look at what you don't have, and how do you be resourceful, how do you be creative. So that was a difficult adjustment phase. Even just small things, I'm going to watch, I think my first game I went to watch was Fortuna Köln, so in Cologne, and picking your ticket up. I've got to go pick my ticket up from a set position. Sometimes in this country, it's a petrol station, for example. I've got to then speak German or try and get the words out, or hope they speak English. So it's the day-to-day things which probably I didn't expect it to be a struggle. Was a struggle at the beginning. Football's football. You try and find a way. You know, I tried to prepare myself as best I could. I tried to speak the language as early as I could, almost like an actor, writing down lines and trying to memorise things and making so many silly mistakes, as I even do today when I speak German. It's normal, but I guess just jumping in head first and saying, come on, what can I take from it really? And also add value. And I took this job because I firmly believed I could add value to where the club was and what they're trying to build. And I'm a big believer in that, and big believer in taking projects because you can add your value. You can work how you want to work, and you can work with good people. I don't think it's about chasing the lights or chasing the money all the time. I think it's about making sound decisions based upon people and a project.
And were the German people open-minded about you? Because I've found that there can be a perception that we don't like travelling, we don't like learning other languages, other cultures, you know, and a lot of that's probably fair. So, what was the perception of you and of English people? Yeah,
listen, I'm sure there was a start where one or two maybe rolled their eyes. I'm not sure. But listen, what I will say is, on the majority, I felt like I was welcomed with open arms, if I'm honest. I think people saw that I was trying to embed in the culture. I was trying to adjust as quickly as I possibly could. I didn't want to be the English guy who only talks English. I didn't want to make people feel uncomfortable in their country. I was very conscious of that. But you know, there's all sorts of things which come with that, and the challenges which come with it. But I guess when you talk about stigmas of cultures, it's quite funny because we're known to the German people as English people, sunburn, drinking beer and fighting. No, that's the three things we're known as. And I always say, look, I really love boxing, but I'm not much of a fighter. I don't drink that often, but I've got to put my hands up. Sunburn, I'm pretty a candidate, a good candidate for sunburn. But I guess it's challenging those cultures, right, and trying to find out, you know, what works. And you know, coming from England, I was very conscious of not saying everything we do in England is better than what we do here. And I guess no matter where I've been, also in America was the case as well. Trying to adjust to a new culture, bring your ideas, but also being open enough to accept things that, you know, we don't always do everything right in England, or we don't always do everything right in Germany, and trying to find that sweet spot and balance between bringing everyone's experiences together, again, for the good of the project to try and be successful.
And I was interested in looking at your career. So you started out coaching, then you've gone into analysis, which is quite different. Then, I mean, there's other similarities. Then you've gone into recruitment, and then you've gone into sporting director. So has it been hard moving into those different areas? And how did that happen?
Yeah, I guess going into performance analysis, I'd probably say I stumbled into it at the beginning, if I'm honest. So I started my coaching badges. I was lucky enough to get a job at Leeds United at the satellite centres at the time, working for the local FA as a skills coach, going into schools. And then again, you know, those sliding door moments. I met Sean O'Driscoll at 20, and he was good enough to give me my chance to become a performance analyst at Doncaster Rovers at the time in League One. I was studying at the time too, so I did it 1 year as a volunteer, and that propelled me into, I guess, the football life is a better way to put it. But that moment of meeting Sean again, that opportunity, although I didn't quite know, if I'm honest, what a performance analyst was. I guess it was pretty new then. We're talking 17 years ago now, so it was a pretty new way of, I guess, analysing games. And I guess coaches had done it for years with DVDs and videotapes, but actually employing a set person, then it was pretty much at its infancy still. And Sean had the foresight to see that as a value added for the club at the time. And you know, I had to learn to then use a computer and cut video and try and adjust socially to a professional environment, which, you know, I had a great support network around me at that time with Sean as the head coach, you know, with Richard O'Kelly as the number 2, very experienced and a great person. Lee Butler as a goalkeeper coach who's, you know, been around the block in football all his life and taught me the streetwise side, I guess, to football. And that was a moment, I guess, at 20 years old, that opportunity shaped and formed me again for everything which I am today. And that relationship with Sean was quite unique for me, and somebody who gives responsibility out, you know, lets people make their decisions, gives people a voice, lets the experts take responsibility for their day-to-day workings, really, and working as a team, understanding what people can and can't do, strengths and weaknesses, and puzzling it all together as a team. And I think you look at that team we got promoted in my first year to the Championship, and sustained our championship status for 3 years, you know, in a league which was full of heavy hitters. You know, we had no right to be in that league, really. And testament to Sean and the work and the structure which he built over years, which I was really, really lucky and fortunate to be a part of.
Because I guess it's not a glamorous club, is it really, Doncaster? But it was quite forward-thinking then at that time.
Absolutely.
In terms of processes.
Yeah, and Sean, again, I can't wax lyrical enough about him and as a coach and a person, because he understands himself to 100%, and he builds people around him to complement what he can and can't do. And I think that was the first time I really saw, okay, maybe having a set weakness is not always a big failure or a big problem. Everybody's got things they can and can't do, and it's about building that jigsaw puzzle together and having people around who can add value again, but also finding people who take responsibility. And it's ruthless, it's sink or swim. It's not for everybody, this performance culture, because there are things which come with it which it's so emotional. It's such an emotionally driven environment. But Sean always tried to rip the emotion back and give onus and responsibility to people, not just staff members but also players. And that probably formed, unbeknown to me at the time, the way I am as a sporting director today, and the type of leader I guess I am, and my leadership style.
I suppose there's luck in meeting people like Sean and like Paul Lambert and getting those opportunities, but then you've got to be open to them and also take them and make the best of them.
Yeah, I've always been that way though, I think. My mum always says I was a child who asked why all the time. Why are we doing this and why is that? And that probably hasn't stopped, and I'm now 37 and I still ask the same questions. And I'm inquisitive as a person. I always want to know the rhyme and reasons behind what we're doing. Very structured, very analytical. I think that goes with our job and what we do and what's expected of us, really. But I think that curiosity, what I've got, is to keep having new experiences, keep meeting new people. There's a whole plethora of people before my time who've also left the country and experienced different countries and different cultures in different walks of life, and I think that can only help people, not only a job role as mentioned, but also as a person. And I think if we can keep developing as people and keep trying our best to put our best mindset forward to learn as much as we possibly can, and be open to learn things and open to make mistakes and get back up again and keep trying to make good decisions. And I think that holds people in good stead in regardless of what you do in life to keep moving forward.
Another significant person, I think, in your career is Paul Mitchell. And it's quite interesting because we've had quite a few people on the pod who he's influenced and mentored, like Natasha Patel, talked about him, Lawrence Stewart. So, how useful did you find that time head of scouting at New York Red Bulls, where I think, was he your ultimate boss there?
Yeah, fantastic, really. So I first met Paul, I think it was in the summer of 2019. So I was exposed to him for the first time, meeting up in Leipzig with Ralph Rangnick, Paul Mitchell, Marcus Crusher was the new sport director at the time, and Lawrence Stewart also a part of it. And they built the global team in that period of time, and Paul and Lawrence went to the global team. And the biggest pull for me was, I've just reeled off three names there, for example, Ralph, Paul and Lawrence, three fantastic practitioners and great people to try and learn off, and be exposed to, and add that to the mix. Kevin Thelwell in New York as well. It was such a fantastic opportunity for me to again test myself in the arena where you've got some pretty tried and tested individuals who've already achieved a lot in the game. So again, majorly thankful for the opportunity, and working with Paul for Paul at the time was eye-opening, because you've got someone who's had an element of success in the past, and someone who's so driven, direct, very clear, huge amount of clarity in what he expects and what he demands from people. At the same time, a very open person who can laugh at the right times as well. And I think this all-encompassing role as a sporting director, you must put different hats on, and that was something which Paul does phenomenally well, and still to this day remains someone who is one of my go-tos, I guess, whenever I've got a problem to solve or I want to bounce some ideas off somebody. Paul is definitely someone who I can call, which I'm, again, thankful for. I guess the theme of this podcast so far has been thankful, right?
Yeah, definitely superb. And the Red Bull group has had such an influence on football throughout Europe, I think. We've had Danny Roll and Ruben Selles on the pod from the Red Bull group again. So, in terms of style of play and the way that they operate. So what are some of the cornerstones of the success of that group, do you think?
Yeah, it's majorly interesting. I think the biggest thing I took away from it was the amount of clarity in philosophy, clarity in principles, clarity in expectations. It was very much laid out to me at the beginning. For example, in New York, I will be judged upon building a squad that is capable of challenging for the MLS Cup. At the same time, building or help build a pipeline of talent from North America, South America, through to Leipzig. And our ultimate goal is that Leipzig win the Bundesliga. So already, just off the back of those three things, you've got real clarity in what it should look like at the end, or could look like. But then it's about the day-to-day workings, right? How are we going to achieve that? And every department feels like it's synonymous in Red Bull football. Everybody knows the Red Bull way of playing, for example. You don't have to be inside to know what it looks like. And I think the level of clarity they have in what they expect makes everybody's job in turn easier. So my job as a chief scout then was much easier because I knew exactly what a Red Bull player profile looked like, what we was looking for, whether that was a skill set perspective, an age perspective, and the core principles they have ties everything together. If I use the example of looking for young players, for example, that will meet every single department in some capacity. So from a scouting perspective, we're looking for young players who may be on the verge of making their debut, without making their debut preferably. They've also got a huge resale value. If they come, develop and do well, you've got a resale value there. So from a squad building perspective, it makes sense. From a coaching perspective, you've got young, malleable individuals who are still forming their brain patterns, let's say, are very coachable. You're looking from a athletic perspective, young players with regards to repeated sprints, can recover quicker between repeated sprints, can recover quicker between training sessions, etc., etc. So just taking one element of working with young players is just an example of how it meets every single department. And when every single department can work together towards a common goal, then I think you're going to be really strong. And that's something Red Bull, just one example of, do phenomenally well.
And there seems to be a real genius of alignment with the group, just starting with Red Bull. So aligning with the style of play, high energy, high intensity. That's the drink and that's the style as well.
And also, you look at that as well with the staff. The staff members was pretty similar, and you look back at the staff that was employed or are employed at the time when I was there. They also mirrored our playing style. It was very much clearly made. We're not a sleeping tablet or an energy drink. So we need to be energy. We need to be enthusiastic. We've got young, innovative people with bright ideas involved across all the 4 different clubs or 3, disregarding Salzburg at the time. So it was almost like we don't just say it. This is what we want to do, and we're going to live it. We're going to breathe it, and we're going to be held accountable to it as well. Which, for someone like myself in my job role, made my job role fascinating, just fascinating.
Excellent. And I was going to spin right back to the start. So when you're at Hull University, and I think you studied sports science there, and you played for the uni team, and you had a well-known head coach when you were there.
Yeah. So Graham Potter was the head coach at the time. And again, I guess at the time you don't realise who you're exposed to. When you look back now, socially how he was, for a player who didn't always play as well in his team. He was just a different type of coach to what I'd been exposed to in the past, I guess. And since that moment, been majorly successful. Of course, everything what he's done. But I guess the major reference point is how he is as a person. And, I think that shines through in not only his teams and how they play, but also how he conducts himself. And I almost learned a lot from him at the beginning without actually knowing it at the time.
I was actually talking to a sporting director earlier this week, and we were just talking about like that thing of the iceberg when you see the success above the water, but then not all the work beneath. And he actually used the example of Graham Potter. So, he's the head coach of a uni team. He was, I think, 4th division in Sweden on very low wages, and we just see him as a Premier League manager now. But a hell of a lot of hard work has gone in, and he didn't know the success was going to come, did he, at the start when he was doing that?
That's it. And I guess it's finding those people, it's quite a special skill set to have, to be able to jump into something new and see it through without knowing where it's going to take you. And I guess that's elite sport in general. You never quite know where it's going to take you, in which direction. Again, reference point, hugely emotionally charged. We don't want to change that because that's what makes it special to us, football. But at the same time, that brings a level of unpredictability. But I guess, if you could have envisaged where Graham is now in his career, and he knew that at the beginning, then I'm not sure if he would be telling the truth on that. But he's shown and paved the way for people like myself to go into international waters and try and be a success. I referenced earlier on, there's many coaches who've gone abroad, and Graham's one of them, and he's one of the people in my mind to say he's gone abroad, sustained a new culture and learned, developed himself, jumped into something new head first, and of course where he is now is testament to everything what he is as a person and the skill set he's got.
Have you stayed in touch with him since?
No.
You can't keep in touch with everyone, can you, obviously? I suppose you look on with interest to see what he's doing and vice versa. Yeah, brilliant. What are your ambitions for the future? Do you see yourself as a German now, or would you like to come back to England at some point?
Yeah, I'm not giving up my English passport just yet. I'm going to hold on to that. But listen, I'm someone who just enjoys, again, the project really. And I think it's the same as talent. I've said many times, talent is everywhere in the world. You just got to look for it. And that's the same with opportunity. Opportunities everywhere in the world. You just got to be open enough for it. But I feel really at home here in Germany. I really enjoyed the football. I really enjoy the structure of a football club. I really enjoy the responsibility and what comes with it. So, from that perspective, I'm not against staying in Germany for the next years and hopefully having a success here at this football club where I'm at now. And that's, for me, the most important thing right now, to try and sustain myself in this football club and bring this football club back to hopefully where we was last season in the Bundesliga at some stage. But at the same time, being realistic as to the league we're in, the challenges we've got and what we're about to face.
Oh, that's brilliant. Thanks so much for your time, Paul.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Training Ground Guru podcast. We'll be back next month with another episode. In the meantime, you can follow our latest updates on the website and on Twitter @ground_guru.